In regard to our study of the life of Samson, it is unfortunate, at least it seems to me to be unfortunate, that Susan and I have missed 2 Sundays in the month of July. I will assure you those have not been pleasure Sundays. They have not been vacation Sundays. We have been in Houston. We have been in Dallas with alumni events and recruiting events and meeting events and speaking events, and they've been anything but vacation and pleasure, but it's not been healthy for our life of Samson study. So I'm glad you're here this morning, and really the crowd is good this morning, and I know we have a lot listening online, and I know that school starts. Can you comprehend that school starts at the end of this week, and next week it's full blown? It's major, and so a lot of people are probably taking last minute trips for that. 2 things thus far that I think you need to remember from the life of Samson, and I know you haven't heard it for a while, but 2 things that at this point are really important. The first is this statement, and that is that we have learned that we should live like we believe. And I kind of promised you that all the way through the study I'd keep coming back to that statement. And don't we believe some amazing things? Don't all of you believe that God created this world? And all of you believe that with God all things are truly possible? He is without limit in anything. And all of you believe that Jesus was sent by God to save us, and that now because of Jesus we are God's children, and He loves us more than we can possibly understand. And He sees every need that we have, even in the midst of our massive struggles that we have, such as Ken Boggs is going through. He sees everything going on. He loves us. He wants the best for us. He works for our good. What if we lived like we believe that all the time? Would it not make a big difference? And would it not be maybe the secret to the abundant life that Jesus talked about in John chapter 10? Live like we believe. The second principle is really different. The second principle is there is an outer strength that you and I have, and there is an inner strength. And from Samson, we learn that he is the strongest man ever to live on the face of this earth. I think that statement's accurate. The strongest man ever to live on the face of this earth. But inwardly, he is not very strong. And he makes a mess of things over and over again. And so what you learn out of those 2, the inner strength is more important. And you can be extremely beautiful, but if you're not strong on the inside, the beauty disappears from our eyes so very quickly. So what's on the inside is always more important than what's on the outside. And Samson, on the inside, is kind of messed up, like a lot of us. Now, I want to be really careful, because I don't want to damage your childhood thoughts about Samson. When I was a little boy, I can remember my parents taking me to church. I'm relatively certain I never listened to a thing a preacher said when I was that age. But I do know they had given me, or someone had given me, a little Bible that had pictures in it. Do you remember a picture Bible about that big? And I would spend my time looking at pictures. My all-time favorite pictures. I wish I had that Bible back, because I think I remember Samson, the story, the 1-page picture of Samson, of this giant man. And maybe it was a picture of him ripping the gates off that city. And he's kind of been that hero all through life. And what we're going to say about Samson is not that flattering for several weeks. But God uses him even though he's not right on the inside. And the best part of it is, though the story is tragic, it ends really well. The story is going to end really well. And I don't like stories that don't end well. Samson's story is going to end well. So we're in Judges chapter 14. The background of this story, we're going to look at a lot of scriptures. We'll look at them quickly. Greg said his entire thing lasted 15 minutes last week, and I said that's the perfect length because people have that short attention span, and they don't need a nap yet. They can have it this afternoon. That's kind of my philosophy too. But we'll go through the scriptures very quickly, but I want you to watch what happens. Remember, Samson has seen a woman who is a Philistine woman in Timnah, and he has gone to his parents and demanded, I want you to go get that woman for me. And you remember his parents are protesting and saying, but she's a Philistine. Can't you find someone among the Israelites? It's just not the right kind of person for you. And Samson's response is kind of like a spoiled child, go get her for me. And I suspect these parents have bowed down to him over and over and over again. Now that's the background. First thing you're going to see about Samson, and again, I feel kind of badly about all this, but you're going to see he probably has a deceit problem in his life. He probably has a deceit problem. Now, as I say that though, is there anyone you have ever known that does not have in some way a deceit problem? And deceit sometimes is just a forthright speaking of words that are lies. I just tell you a lie. But deceit is also sometimes found in withholding information that I could easily tell you, but I withhold it because I want to deceive you with the withheld information. And sometimes deceit is done by changing the figures in a book, a ledger. And I know there are other ways. But as we read the next verses, I want you to see, if you can see in Samson, a little bit of deceit. Interesting story. Let's pick it up in chapter 14. Samson went down to Timnah together with his father and mother. As they approached the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion came roaring toward him. Now, I don't know what it means, a young lion, do you? But I don't, it's roaring. That doesn't mean probably a little bobcat. It probably doesn't mean, it's probably getting close to full grown, and it's a lion, and he's very, very strong, and he's very, very hungry apparently, and he comes roaring towards Samson. He just chooses the wrong prey. He doesn't know what Samson's like. And so the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, upon Samson, so he tore the lion apart with his bare hands as he might have torn a young goat. Now, think of the imagery of that. How did that happen? He could have just reared back and hit him in the nose, and the lion would have probably rolled over and been knocked out for a while. But I found myself wondering, did he grab up that lion and rip his mouth so powerfully apart that it ripped his head apart? Or did he take him by the mane and whatever and just rip his head off? He destroyed this lion so very easily. But, look at the last sentence. He told neither his mother or his father what he had done. Interesting. He didn't tell them. I keep going with the story. Then he went down and talked with this woman, and he liked her. Apparently, before he'd just seen her and said, wow, I want her to be my wife. And now he goes down and talks with her, he likes her. So sometime later, when he went back to marry her, he turned aside and took the lion's, look at the lion's carcass. And in it he saw a swarm of bees and some honey. He scooped out some of the honey with his hands. He ate it as he went along. When he rejoined his parents, he gave them some. They ate it too. But he did not tell them he had taken the honey from a lion's carcass. Why? Why would I stand before you on a precious Sunday morning with your precious time and tell you that part of the story? And why would I use, connected to that part of the story, the word deceit? Why would I do that? Well, maybe because of this. We spent so much time in the early days of the study of Samson making sure everyone understood that the angel of the Lord said to his parents, he will be a Nazirite from birth. And the idea he's going to be a Nazirite from birth till the end of his life. He's going to live according to the Nazirite vow. Do you remember what we said about the Nazirite vow? You would never drink anything that had been fermented or had alcohol in it. The wine of that day was alcohol all. Don't drink any wine. Don't cut your hair. What was the third thing? Don't touch anything that's dead. Stay away from everything that's unclean. Now, I don't know if self-defense was justified in killing the lion. Probably so, but he might have been able to pick that lion up and throw him up against a tree and walk away. I don't know. But I know when he came back, going over and scooping honey out of that lion was something a Nazirite would say, no. I know the honey looks good. I know the honey would be pleasing to my taste. I know the honey would be nourishing to me, but it is no, because I've been called of God to be a Nazirite. There are some things you do when you're called of God, and there's some things you don't do. That was one he's not supposed to do. All I know is in both cases, he didn't want to tell mom and dad. Now, all I can do is tell you when I grew up. When I didn't want to tell mom and dad, there was probably good reason. Because if they knew, I would be what? In trouble. And I'm going to tell you, mom and dad didn't spoil me. That's why last time I talked about being spoiled. Spoiled Steve, didn't spoil me. I mean, even at Dad's funeral, we talked about this. I mean, it was not uncommon for Ken and Nick to go to the bedroom, lean over the bed, in would come the belt, and I would get strapped with the belt, sometimes with the pants up, sometimes with the pants down. You know what Steve would do? Little bitty guy. Just smile. Just laugh. He never got it out, you know. Spare the rod, spoil the child. There are some things I never wanted mom and dad to know because I knew it wasn't right. So here's Samson coming along, and there seems to be a little deceit. Now look at the next section. I'm going to call it a pride section. I don't know if I'm right about this. You'll have to decide. You understand, I've said it so many times standing here. I don't know if I'm right about anything. But look at the scripture that happens next and think about this pride issue. Now his father went down to see the woman. It's back in the day when you have to arrange all this stuff. Mom and dad have to arrange for you to get married. And there Samson held a feast. Probably nothing wrong with that. It was customary for young men to do this. When the people saw him, they chose 30 men to be his companions. Big feast. Now it continues. Let me tell you a riddle. Now, here's the part I don't know about. It's okay to have a wedding party. It's okay for him to kind of be the center of attention. But I wonder if Samson was the center of attention a lot. Because growing up, would he have stood out maybe a little differently? Would people have been noticing him differently? We grew up watching the old black and white Superman shows, right? And sometimes they turned a little later to color. But Clark Kent was Superman And Superman was always trying to hide his what? His identity and his strength. By the way, you all need to watch the first episode of Superman. You need to know when he arrived on this earth. The very first episode, he comes from the planet of Krypton on April the 10th, 1951. He and I got here at the same time. As I've told my grandchildren, how do you know? But we keep this secret. Superman kept it secret. I don't know about Samson. So he says in the middle of the feast, let me tell you a riddle. He's bringing the attention all to himself. Let me tell you a riddle. If you can give me the answer within 7 days of the feast, I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 sets of clothes. Ricky, back in our day, we called it a show-off. You know, it's just kind of showing what I can do. If you can solve this one, fellas, I'm going to give you a bunch of wealth here. And so he tells them the riddle. Now, wait a minute. If you can't give me the answer, then you must give me 30 linen garments and 30 sets of clothes. Well, let us hear the riddle, he said. Tell us the riddle. He replied, out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet. Now, he's talking about his lion deal. They have no idea. For 3 days, they could not give the answer. During those 3 days, how do you think Samson is feeling? Can you almost see him there with his wedding party smiling and saying, they can't figure it out, can they? There's something when I read this story that struck me thinking, he's not too big for his britches because he's a big guy apparently. But he's acting like that. Everybody following that? I just wonder if Samson knew this massive strength. I mean, he could look around and think, who of my buddies could kill a lion like that? Who of my buddies could rip him apart like that? I am extra special. And now he kind of goes to this wedding and sets himself out, and he could have sat over in the center there and just been so very grateful for having the opportunity to get married, but he's going to tell him a riddle. Pride's not a good thing. It almost feels like a set of pride. There's a third thing I see in the story. I'm going to use the word blame. Blame is something we do when we don't want to take responsibility for what the outcome is. Okay? When we don't want to take personal responsibility, we blame somebody else. That's what Adam did in the garden. That's the very first thing we find in the garden after eating the forbidden fruit. God says, Adam, did you take that fruit? And he says, not really. She did it. You keep pointing at your wife? Yeah, that's right. She did it. And so look at this part of the story. It's really interesting part of the story. On the fourth day, they said to Samson's wife, these are the Philistines going to their Philistine woman. They said to Samson's wife, coax your husband-to-be, into explaining the riddle for us, or we'll burn you and your father's household to death. Now, that's pretty good incentive. She may have been a good, fine woman, and she may not have wanted to do that, but if you don't do it, we're going to burn you, and we're going to burn your father's household to death. We're going to kill you. Did you invite us here to steal our property? We can't figure out the riddle. Lady, we can't figure out the riddle unless you figure out through your husband what the riddle is and tell us so we're going to lose a bunch of money here. So then Samson's wife threw herself on him, sobbing. Now listen to this. You must hate me. You don't really love me. I won't even go where I'm thinking, okay? You don't really love me. You've given my people, a riddle You haven't even told me the answer. Well, I haven't explained it even to my mother and father. So why should I explain it to you? Now, here's where it gets me. She cried the whole 7 days of the feast. Now, even Samson can't handle that. Okay? Even Samson can't handle this nagging situation. Now, I didn't say nagging wife. I said nagging situation on purpose. Everybody capturing what I'm saying here? Why are you men smiling? Why are you men giggling? For 7 days, she whimpers around and she cries around, if you love me, you would tell me. Type thing. On the 7th day, he finally told her. He just couldn't take it anymore. The guy that can tear apart a lion can't handle a woman who just keeps nagging and nagging and nagging. You know? He needed to go to the farm. He needed to get in the pickup and drive away for a while. I mean, Burke, erase this recording, okay? Do not let this out in public. She continued to press him. So he in turn explained the riddle to her people. She in turn explained the riddle to the people. Before sunset on the 7th day, the men of the town said to him, what is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? Uh-oh. David solved the riddle. Sweet, honey. Strong, lion. And Samson said to them, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle. If you had not gotten involved with my wife-to-be, if you had not coaxed her, this would not have happened. Everybody see that? And Samson is not happy. And he's mad. And he's blaming them. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him because God's going to use this. And I like this idea, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. I'm going to tell you a little secret. I pray often that God will give me the measure of the Spirit, of His Spirit that I need to do what He's called me to do. So this morning, I prayed that here. Give me the measure of your Spirit you know I need to do what I need to do here. I do it frequently in different situations. And he went down to Ascalon, struck down 30 of their men, stripped them of everything, gave their clothes to those who explained the riddle. And burning with anger, he returned to his father's home, and Samson's wife was given to one of his companions who had attended the feast. Now, let me ask you in this last phrase of this story, whose fault? Whose fault was all this? Samson blamed whom? The Philistines. If you had not gone and threatened my wife, if you had not gone and coaxed her, you would have never figured it out, which was true. Did the woman have any fault to play in this? I mean, had she really known Samson and known his massive strength, she could have gone and whispered, Samson, they're trying to get me to tell you, coax you to tell me the riddle. And Samson could have said, honey, just stay over here for a second and let me take care of these people. He could have solved that problem. So it's partly her fault. But who is at fault the most in the story? Who started all this mess? The man who I think may have been a bit prideful. He's the one who did not have to tell a riddle. He did not have to put money behind the riddle. He did not have to make a wager. He did not have to do any of this stuff. So in reality, it's more Samson's fault than anybody's fault. One of the things I thought about when I was thinking about this is, when anything goes wrong in life, there are all kinds of sides to the story. And everybody's side may have a little bit of truth to it. But if you can ever figure out the real truth, you'll probably come to one side that's really the problem. Everybody get that kind of? That's why we ought to be so very, very careful about judging someone or something that seems not to align with our thinking, because we don't know every little thing going on. So you hear a story from the life of Samson. God uses it to initiate harm toward the Philistines, whom he wants to ultimately destroy. But Samson shows perhaps some deceit in the story. He shows some pride in the story. And he shows a lack of accountability in the story. All are things that are poor qualities from the inside of a person. So I close with this statement. We have been called to live according to our calling, to the best of our ability. I just wonder if Samson's mom and dad emphasized that enough. Samson, you've been called. You would not even be on the earth had it not been for God intervening in our lives. We couldn't have children. God gave you to us. And you are going to be a Nazirite your whole life. And God's going to use you with massive strength to save our people from the Philistines. You've been called of God. And all God asks of you is for you to walk like a Nazirite. And he didn't do it. He didn't do it. But the lesson we take away is we too have been called by God. Do you believe that? We've been called out of this world into the light of the kingdom of Jesus Christ. We were born into a new kingdom. And we belong to a king named Jesus. And we've been called to walk like Jesus walked. That doesn't mean you go out and stand on this corner of the street telling everybody, I'm a member of this particular church over here and do this or stop doing this or you're going to go to hell. That doesn't mean that's not how it works. Jesus never did that. Jesus walked along and he looked at people in situations that were pitiful and he would touch them and he would help them and he would just show himself to be good, and then he would speak such wonderful words and people would say, this man's different. I want to follow him. We've been called to be like him. You don't have to be a great teacher. You don't have to be this or that. You just have to walk according to your calling and be like Jesus the best you can. And you know what? People will notice. They will notice. And the darker the world gets, the less they're going to know about church buildings and Bibles. And I'm now convinced that we live in the Midwest, but more and more of the world knows so little about what you and I know and about what you and I talk about. And what they're going to have to see is preaching through the life that we live according to our calling. Just be a good person. I'll close with this one statement. I'm going to just keep going, but I do remember speaking at the funeral of Van Hall. And I remember what people were saying about Van Hall, who used to be an elder here. I don't know that Van Hall ever went out on the job sites or the construction sites or whatever and talked about where he went to church or talked about this or talked about that. All I know is that people, one after another said, he was such a good man. And his language was always so good, and his attitude was always so good. And I think what he did in his own humble way, he just walked according to his calling. And he didn't have to say very much about it. People everywhere knew. Am I making my point? Samson, I wish, would have walked according to his calling. God could accomplish the same thing that way. I don't think he can accomplish winning this world unless you and I walk according to our calling the best we can. Will there be some deceit in your life? Yes. Will there be some pride in your life? Yes. Will you blame some other people for things that you should take responsibility for? Probably. We all do it. We're not proud of it. And we beg God to forgive us for it. Walk according to your calling. Live according to your calling. Jesus called us. And he's the center of everything we do. It's interesting, last week I was going to preach in this place, and I was going to do early service and second service, and I had a lesson that I'd actually done here. I was going to do it when I did in Houston. It'd be easy to do, and I said to the preacher, anything special we talk about? And he said, all we talk about in this church is Jesus. He said, all we talk about is Jesus. It's all I preach about is Jesus. So I switched my lesson around and talked about Jesus. Because he's the center of everything.